Hello students, welcome to the answer writing program. So today we will be discussing 3 questions from infrastructure and investment, international economic organizations and development finance institutions. So these are the topics of GS3 economy. Let's take an overview of all the 3 questions. So the first question is related to the impediments what India is facing in its energy security. The second question is related to the challenges or the benefits of the privatization of power discoms in India. The third question is related to the issues revolving around subsidies at the international forums like WTO. So let's start with the first question. We need to discuss the impediments India is facing in pursuit of its energy security. Like, we are aiming to achieve the energy security. So what are the challenges or what are the roadblocks in attaining this energy security? So this is the question. So before writing what are the challenges, we need to know, or we must be very well aware about what is energy security, what are its various dimensions. Then on those dimensions, what India is doing. Means in this pursuit of this energy security, what India is doing. Then we will write what are the challenges in attaining energy security in India. So starting with the introduction, what we can write in the introduction is about the definition of energy security, or you can write some targets as well with respect to the government of India. That government of India is aiming to be energy Atmanirbhar or attain energy Atmanirbharta by 2040. Or what is energy security? The uninterrupted supply of the natural resources for the production of electricity, or let's say to improve the mobility. As example, the crude oil for the automobiles or the various sectors of the economy, coal, petroleum, gas for the generation of electricity. So we want uninterrupted supply at affordable cost. So this is energy security. Okay. Now let's discuss what are the various dimensions of energy security. Now energy security is about these 4 aspects majorly, and in the mains paper as well try to write into the different dimensions. This will help you to memorize more also and try to segregate at the different dimensions as well. Like at the supply, we need to transition our energy sources for our energy security. We need to diversify our energy sources so as to enhance the energy security. We need independence. Independence of what? From import dependency. Now let's discuss one by one. So we need to be energy secured via increase in supply, like uninterrupted supply. How it can be there? And also along with the uninterrupted supply, we need to be energy efficient. When we will be energy efficient with the less amount of the resources like coal, natural gas, we can transmit or distribute to the more number of the units, to more number of the consumers. If the losses are less, if we are more energy efficient, our demand for that resources would be less. So within that particular amount of sources of energy, we can utilize it at the maximum. So the optimal utilization of resources should be there. It is also the one dimension of the supply, uninterrupted supply. Okay, so uninterrupted supply. So this is the one major dimension. Now what India is doing over here? India is doing the holistic reforms with respect to AT&C losses, with respect to generation, transmission and distribution losses, and trying to be more regular supply for these particular sectors. Government is incentivizing the new technologies so as to increase the energy efficiency, so as to increase the supply. Next is about India is coming up with the holistic policy reforms in these particular dimensions with respect to the generation, with respect to the transmission, with respect to the distribution losses and various other aspects. Now coming on to the transition. Transition means we are taking the transition from the fossil fuel based economy to the renewable sources of energy. And if we have the multiple raw material or the multiple sources of energy, let's suppose we have coal, we have petroleum, we have natural gas, we have methanol, hydrogen, biofuel, etc. It means whenever there is an interruptions in this particular supply, we can get used to this. So our interruption of supply would not be there, so that there would be uninterrupted supply, so it enhances the energy security. So we need to transition from the only dependency from the one sources of energy to the other sources of energy as well. That is why India is also transitioning from this particular aspect to the renewable sources. Now what Indian government is doing, National Hydrogen Mission is there, methanol is there, biofuel. At the sidelines of G20 Global Biofuel Alliance, India is done with. Then coming up with to the solar power projects, wind power, nuclear power, etc. India is focusing on all these aspects as well. Now coming on to the diversification. Now what does diversification means? Means the India should not be dependent on just the one importer of energy, or India should not be dependent only on the one region like Persian Gulf. So if there is any interruption at the supply chain, if there is any supply shock, then India's energy security could be hampered. So we need to take care for that also. So we need to diversify our sources where we are importing our energy. So India has come up with the energy diplomatic ties like Bhutan. India is importing energy from Bhutan also. Then strategic ties with Russia. ONGC Videsh Limited is doing the gas exploration in the Far East Russia. Then US India nuclear deal. Then India Japan civil nuclear deal to enhance the energy security. Next, moving on to the independence. So we should be import independent. This is not possible right now, but still we are targeting and we are moving in this particular dimension. For that, we are making the contingency plans like strategic reserves, etc. See, these points are not in the silos they are applicable. They are interrelated. They are interlinked with each other point. Like if we will be transitioning from the one sources to the another sources, then it will help in uninterrupted supply. If we diversify also, again it will help in uninterrupted supply. So these all points are interrelated. Now let's see what are the challenges with respect to this pursuit of energy security. Now we understood that what are the energy security dimensions, what Indian government is doing in that, and what are the challenges in this pursuit of energy security. This is main answer. Now let's discuss. We have already discussed what is the background. Now we will come into the challenges. Now with respect to the supply or energy efficiency, let's say, or with respect to the policies, what are the challenges? See, we have approximately 21% to 22% losses, AT&C losses in the electricity. In the transmission and distribution, there are the huge impediments. With respect to the energy efficiency, again there are losses. Then comes to the policy, there are the regulatory issues, regulatory hurdles are there with respect to the policy, planning, monitoring and implementation. Coming on to the transition, we are transitioning from the one sources to another, but still we are overly dependent on the coal. Our economy is overly dependent, approximately more than 60% we are dependent on coal also till now. And still we are moving to the renewable sources of energy, but we do not have much more skilled labor for this technology to take place, to transmit in India. We have the issues with respect to the hydrogen. We are producing the hydrogen, like how hydrogen gets produced. We use water, we do the electrolysis, we get hydrogen. And in this electrolysis process, we need electricity. If this electricity comes from the renewable sources of energy, then it is known as the green hydrogen. If we'll take it from the natural gas, then it is not the green hydrogen, or this is not the renewable energy. So we are transitioning towards the green or the renewable sources, so that our dependency on the coal, natural gas, petroleum, whatever we are importing should be reduced. But what is the issue with respect to this? The electricity what we are procuring for the generation of hydrogen, the sources are not yet very much transparent or disclosed. Okay, so with respect to the biofuels, yes, India has come up with the new targets, but again they have revised the targets and India is facing some challenges with respect to that as well. With respect to the solar power, evacuation of the solar power, like on the rooftop solar power stations are there, but sending that solar energy to the grid is a challenge. And if they are continuing using in that particular household or wherever that solar power stations have been installed, the continuity is not there. Like the solar power we can generate maximum at the daytime only. So there are issues with respect to that as well. Next, coming on to the diversification. Diversification, although India is diversifying its bases or its sources of energy from the Persian Gulf to Russia to Colombia to the different regions or the areas, but again, what are the challenges in that? Like recently, Houthi rebels have attacked Saudi Arabia refineries. Russia-Ukraine war is there. So due to the geopolitical challenges or the wars or the battles and the different attacks, civil war is there. So this creates the hampering in the India's diversification aspects as well. So these are the diversification issues. So if you will divide your answer into the multiple dimensions, so that it will be easy for you as well to think that what are the various issues at the various levels. If you know the issues, if you know what India is doing, then what challenges you can write, what are the various dimensions, so that would be very easy task for you to be write this answer. Okay. Moving on to the body part. India's pursuit of energy security. This we have already discussed, that what India is doing to achieve on the path for the energy security. So this we have already discussed very in the different dimensions. Then what are the impediments? If we know what are the different dimensions, what India is doing, then we also have seen that what are the different challenges with respect to that. Okay, so we have discussed this portion as well. Finally, coming on to the conclusion, what we can write in the conclusion. Now, you can write that there is a energy trilemma. What is energy trilemma? Energy sustainability, energy security, energy accessibility and affordability, or you can say equity. This is energy trilemma. We need to balance this to be energy secured region or to maintain our energy security. How? Why this is trilemma? Means it is very difficult to achieve all these aspects at the same time. Let's take an example of renewable energy. Though renewable energy are sustainable, but are they secured? We cannot get renewable energy like solar energy, wind energy, maybe wind energy also at night. So these are some issues with respect to the renewable energy. Then coming on to the coal. Is coal sustainable? No. But yes, coal, if supply is continuous, then it can be secured. Maybe it is accessible or affordable. We are just looking at these two dimensions right now. So yes, there is an issue. We cannot achieve all at the same time right now, but in future when there will be the economy of scale, new technological advancements would be there, new collaborations would be there, then we might can achieve all these things, all these dimensions. But right now this is the energy trilemma. We need to balance these dimensions at Indian scale to maintain energy security. So this could be your conclusion. Okay. Moving on to the model answer. Starting with some data, then India's pursuit of energy security, then impediments, what India is facing, then finally conclusion. Okay, moving on to the next question. Now moving on to the next question. How far does the privatization of power discoms help in reducing existing challenges prevalent in the power distribution sector? So the question is demanding that there are the issues with respect to the power distribution sector. There are the issues in the distribution sector of power. So can privatization of power discoms can solve these issues or solve these challenges? If yes, then how far? It means we need to write down some positives, we need to write down some challenges, or you can say negatives, that these are the issues which can be resolved if we privatize this sector of the power distribution, and these are some challenges that even the privatization cannot resolve. Or you can also write some challenges that if privatization will take place, then these can be the challenges with respect to this particular sector. Okay, so in introduction you can write about some data that India's generation capacity has reached, but still there are the challenges with respect to the transmission and the distribution sector. So with that you can start moving on to the body part. Now let's discuss the overall functioning of the discoms or the distribution, how it works. See, there is a generation utilities where the power is generated like from the coal, water, etc. So the generation is like thermal power plants, etc. Okay, so from there the energy gets transmitted to the transmission units, then distribution. Like the electricity or the power, you can say, at the high voltage when transmitted from the generational utilities to the district substations, then this is transmission. This is at the high voltage. And when the transmission of the power is there at low voltage from the district substation to the different households, agricultural units, industrial unit, that is a distribution network. Okay, so you have seen that the thick wires at the very high heights from one pole to another is there, that are the high transmission lines, and whatever at the low thin wires are there, that are the low voltage wires, that is the distribution lines. So now the distribution companies, discoms, distribution companies, they distribute this power to the houses, agricultural farms, industries, etc., etc. So this is the major functioning of how the electricity gets generated and transmitted and distributed to the households. Now in the generation sector, maximum is the private sector participation is there, like approximately 50% of the power generation is owned by the private sector, 25% is of the state, 25% is of the center. But in the transmission and the distribution utilities or the networks, maximum these utilities are owned by the government, the central government or the state government. Maximum 95% approximately it is owned by the government. Here the problem comes that the discom companies, the distribution companies, these are owned majorly by the state government. This is the one issue we'll see as we are proceeding in the class. Okay, so this is the one issue. Now moving on to the working of how discoms work. If you'll get the functioning, what are the various issues with respect to the discoms, then you can be easily write that how privatization of this particular sector can enhance the efficiency or optimal utilization of this power sector. So now discoms, they buy power from generational units and they sells power or the electricity, you can say, to the consumer. Now the issue starts over here. the recovery from the consumer is not there. Recovery is very poor. Why recovery is very poor? Because there are not smart meters. Consumers do the theft of electricity. They put some hook. Metering is not there. And theft of electricity is the major concern. And subsidized electricity they are getting, the consumers. Again, the consumers are of two type, big or bulk consumers and the normal consumers, or you can say that small consumers. Like all of us are the small consumers, big consumers are like the major, railway is a big consumer, etc. So these small consumers, they get electricity at the subsidized rate. But the discoms, whatever they are buying from this and the recovery of this is not same. They are in the huge losses. First, we have seen from the consumer point of view. So they bear the huge losses. They are of the bad health. They are in the very poor health right now. All the state discoms approximately have the 4 lakh crore debt on their on these companies are there. Now, the major concern why this discom sector is totally fail is that they are owned by the state government majorly. So there are totally inefficiencies are there. There are the high cases of corruptions. Huge corruption is there. Always they are in losses. They are highly inefficient. Infrastructure is outdated or very poor. And even the state governments are not reviving this. AT and C losses are very high. Aggregate, technical and commercial. Commercial is this much only, like the thefts are there, smart metering is not there, metering is not there somewhere. And technical is about there is a very old infrastructure, old transformers, old wires. So the AT and C losses are there and it is approximately 21 to 22%. So whatever the electricity comes from the generation houses, 22% of the electricity gets lost in this AT and C losses only. This is where we were discussing in the previous question also, that we need to increase the efficiency. Like let's suppose if 100 units of electricity is coming from the generation houses, then even if 80-85% gets transmitted to the consumer, then it is a very good case. But see, if 20-22% is going to the AT and C losses only, then where is our energy efficiency? So this is the major issue. So discoms are in the poor health due to these factors as well. Next is why discoms are in poor health, why they have so much loans on their head, is about issue with respect to tariffs. Like the discoms, at what prices they have to sell to the consumer, like to the big consumer or to the small consumer, these tariffs are decided by state electricity regulatory commissions or the central electricity regulatory commissions. Again, these are governmental bodies, and due to the governmental control, populist policies, they do not allow these discoms to increase the tariffs from which they can recover more from these consumers. So they are buying electricity, but they are not recovering due to these tariffs barriers also, these tariffs issue posed by these SCRCs and CERCs. Next issue is about cross subsidization. What is cross subsidization? Discoms have to sell electricity to the small consumers at subsidized rates, like farmers, households, and this would be adjusted by high tariffs on industrial houses. So one issue for the discom is that recovery is less from this side because the tariffs are there, consumer theft issues are there, AT&C losses are there. Next is about, okay, if even if they have given it at the less rates, so they are expecting to get the higher rates from here. But again, there is a issue. What issue? Due to interrupted supply of electricity, due to not good quality of electricity supply to the industrial houses. What they do, like if they want electricity at 7 p.m. to 12 p.m, but at that time maybe there are the electricity cuts. So but these industries, they want uninterrupted supply. Due to this bad quality of the energy or the electricity supply from the discoms, what they do? They do captive generation. What is captive generation? Like generation of electricity by this industry houses only, by its own. They are generating electricity. How? Via gensets, via using diesels. And when they are not utilizing these electricity and they are spending their money to these captive generation while they pay taxes. So again, there are the very huge losses from these industrial houses as well to the discoms. Due to this cross subsidization, due to interrupted supply, due to not good quality supply of electricity to the industrial houses as well. Tariffs are there, consumer issues are there, etc., etc. One more issue is there. Let's understand that as well. Now, you might have listened about in the Electricity Act, which our amendments about to come is this: non-discriminatory open access. Now, what is this open access? Government of India is trying to make India one nation for electricity as well. Right now, what is the condition? These are the discoms, means the infrastructure is of, let's suppose Adani infrastructure is there, means they are supplying to the different consumers, consumer 1, consumer 2 and etc. They are buying electricity from the generation units. Now again, there are the multiple players at the generation side as well, like again Adani is there, Tata is there, Reliance is there, government is there, Jindal is there, etc. Right now, what is happening is, I cannot demand that from this discom that I want energy from Adani only or from Tata only. Like I cannot ask this consumer that yes, I want directly electricity from Tata, you just charge me some money for providing this infrastructure so that they can send via your infrastructure to me. Like let's take an example of mobile phones or the spectrum. Let's take an example that in Punjab, the spectrum for or the wavelengths only Airtel has bought. For the communication, only Airtel has bought new spectrum in Punjab. So, can the users with the cell phones of or the SIMs with Jio, let's take an example of Vodafone. If they call, can Airtel deny that? Okay, I have only bought the spectrum over here. I cannot redirect your calls to the other consumers. No, they cannot deny that. They have to provide the infrastructure. Some contracts are there with respect to Jio, with respect to Airtel. Okay, I am providing my infrastructure to you. You just take the benefit from my infrastructure and pay me a fees. So I have my responsibility or I have my own freedom that if I want to own Airtel SIM, Jio SIM, Vodafone SIM, no one can dictate me that which SIM I need to get. But this is not the case with respect to electricity. If in one particular area, one discom is there, I cannot ask direct electricity from some other point. Because these are majorly owned by the state governments, not the private sector players are not that much. Let's suppose, like take an example, in Delhi it is there, but not in the many other states. So the privatization is missing. So whatever they are doing, they are dictating their terms. But if this open access would be there, so whatever I am demanding, if the private sector comes in more and more over here, then I can ask from this as well. I can ask, there will be the very high, huge, or the fierce competition among the different discoms, among the different electricity providers would be there. And when there is a fierce competition is there, it means the productivity would be increased, the charges would decrease, there would be high efficiency, and the consumers will be happy as well. There will be not so much debt on the discom houses. Like as we have seen in the examples with respect to our communication sector only, that initially only BSNL, MTNL were there, and there were the very high tariffs on even the one phone call was there. But as soon as many private sector players comes into the competition, now see what is the prices of one call uninterrupted and as long as we can call at the very minimum or the bare prices. So if this model can be replicated into this could be the highly advanced sector with respect to this power discoms. This was all the very detailed issues we have already discussed, that what are the issues with respect to the discom and how private sector comes in and how it can resolve the various issues at the different level. Now we have seen that if the private sector or if the private players comes into the picture, how this can overhaul the whole discom sector. At the consumer prices, at the consumer side also, if the privatization of the discoms would be there, they can enhance the effectivity or efficiency to deliver the electricity, to recover the electricity, so as to provide the new infrastructure like smart metering, smart grids, so that the consumer will not do the theft of the electricity. So when the privatization of these discoms will take place, they will also do some capital expenditure for the new infrastructure. They will come up with the new technologies, how to recover the maximum from the consumer as well. First thing, with respect to the tariffs, now when the multiple players would be there in the game, then independent free regulator should be there to enhance the free competition. And when the multiple players are there, when there is a high competition, there is high efficiency, there is high productivity, we can get the output at the cheaper rates. So this could be the solution for the bad health of the discom, that we need to privatize this sector. We need to take the private sector comes into this particular sector as much as we can. And again, these we have already seen that how we prompting to the open access with respect to the private sector participation will enhance the overall power discoms or the distribution sector. Last issue is about, it's not an issue but still, with respect to the renewable purchase obligation. Now all the discoms have the obligation to buy energy from the renewable houses also, renewable energy sources also. Like there is a target of like 21% of whatever energy they are purchasing, it has to be from the renewable sources of energy. So again, the whatever the state governments discoms are there, they are not very energetic towards buying this. When again the private sector comes in, these renewable energy purchase obligations would be easily implemented, and that too in a very good way. So these were the issues with respect to that. These were the solutions when the privatization of this sector will take place, that how it can results or reforms the with the solutions. Okay, so body, we have already seen the benefits, like operational efficiency would be increased. They would put more and more investment with respect to the renewable energy, new technological advancements, improved market competition, transparency and accountability. Okay. Then what are the limitations? Then yes, if the privatization, they work for the profit maximization, so maybe there are the issues with respect to the price hike. Again, because they work for the profit margins, maybe there can be the limited rural investment in the rural infrastructure, in the rural electrification. Then regulatory oversight. we need the strong regulatory framework when the multiple players would come in, and that could pose a challenge. Then employee concerns. If we privatize this sector, what about the employees who are working in these loss-making discoms? So these are some limitations of the privatization. What we can write in the conclusion, some way forward, that we can do the conditional bidding. Government dictates the term that yes, if the private sector comes in, then he has to fulfill these targets, like they have to generate the renewable energy, they can take this much from the renewable energy, they need to modernize the grid, they need to do the rural electrification, etc., prior signing the contracts. Then tariff regulations, independent bodies are required to face or to put the tariffs, because if it is under the, again, the state government or the central government control, due to the populist policies, due to the election policies, whenever the election comes, they just waive off the loans. This will not do work. So one independent regulator is required. Then social safeguard or targeted subsidies we can provide for the vulnerable section. PPP is the option, long-term sustainability to ensure the energy security and the climate goals. Okay, so this was the conclusion. Let's see the model answer. Starting with some basic data, then potential benefit, privatization, challenges, then coming to the way forward, and finally some conclusion in 1 or 2 lines. Moving on to the next question. The various farm subsidies provided by the government of India, though has benefited the farmer, have become a major cause of concern for India at WTO. So you need to write something that how they have become the challenge, what are the challenges or the issues the other countries are raising at WTO with respect to Indian subsidies. So this is the first part of the question. And in this light of this statement, we need to suggest some solution that what we can do so that these issues can be resolved. So in introduction, what you can write about some status of the subsidies in India. You can write some benefits. In the yesterday's video also, we have discussed that it is there for the agricultural welfare, for the poverty alleviation, for the welfare of the people, etc., etc. So you can write some data as well, that although this budget has reduced the subsidies by the total amount, but still there are the huge subsidies in there. It is a part of the revenue expenditure, and this budget has allocated 1.2 lakh crore primarily from the farm subsidies like PM Kisan Samman Nidhi and MSP, etc. Starting with this, you can write some importance of the farm subsidies, or you can write the importance of the subsidies in the different sector. Okay, moving on to the body. Now we need to write down the issues related to these subsidies at WTO. Now, first we should understand what is the amber box subsidy. So the amber box subsidies are the subsidies that can distort the international trade by making the country's product cheaper in the competition. Like if we give the subsidies to the fertilizer, irrigation, electricity, seeds, or let's say MSP, so this distort the prices at the international market. It distorts the prices. So for that, to put the limit on the subsidies what we can give, there are the multiple different types of the subsidies at the WTO level. At the agreement on agriculture, on the Uruguay round, we have discussed that there are the multiple types of the subsidies: green box, amber box, blue box, etc. And there is a one peace clause. So in amber box, what is written, that we need to cut down the subsidies that distorts the international trade, that distorts the product prices at the global market, so as to reduce the competitiveness. We need to sign this commitment. We should be the member countries should be the signatory of the commitments. But whosoever has not signed those commitments, at least they need to try to limit these subsidies into 5 to 10% of their value of production. So there is a clause with respect to that. So what are the issues that have been raised with respect to the Indian subsidies? That Indian subsidies cross this 10% limit. Like MSP exceeds 10% limit. Like we give MSP at 1.5 times according to the MS Swaminathan committee, etc. So India is being accused of this violation. Next is about the market distortion. Yes, as much as we give the subsidies, it distort the market prices, and it is one of the type of the trade barriers only. Like if we are giving subsidies to our products, it would be sell at the very cheaper prices in the market. So the other cheaper prices like China, Bangladesh, Vietnam, and at the international scale also, our products will be more cheaper than those. So it distorts the prices. It acts as a trade barrier also. Next is about if we focus more on some type of the crops or the farm subsidies, then it results into the distortion of the cropping pattern, thus hindering the nutritional deficiencies which is there by just growing some few crops and ignoring the others. So these are some issues with respect to WTO and with respect to the Indian subsidies. Moving on to the counter agreement, what Indian government is giving. India is saying that India's aggregate measure of support is below 10%. So India is saying that whatever we are giving subsidies, it is under the that limit of 5 to 10% only. We are not giving more than that. And it is very less than the developed countries. Like let's suppose India is giving approximately $300 to one farmer a year, and with respect to developed countries, it approximately it's $40,000 a year for the one farmer. And in 18.4 of agreement on the agriculture, it considers that if inflation is there, if we need to give the due credit to the inflation and its impact on the ability of the member states, like whosoever are the members of the WTO, if there is a inflationary issues in their countries, they need to consider this inflation to comply with the domestic support commitment. So if there are the inflation in India, so it is okay that we are providing subsidies so that they can withstand this inflation, so that they can take care of the brunt of the inflation on this poor sector. Next is about, because the peace clause allows. Now what is the peace clause? We have missed here. The peace clause signed in this one ministerial conference at Bali, they have signed that we can give, some countries can give as much as they can for the fisheries. The subsidies generated or maintained with respect to the fisheries is okay for like 2 years, so as to boost this fisheries sector at the global scale. So this was signed in the peace clause. So what India is saying, ki peace clause allows the food security program at the National Food Security Act. So that is why we are giving these food security or the free food or the like the major subsidies to this sector. Next is about one argument for from the government of India side is that WTO does not recognizes India's GI tags, so it decreases the marketability of the products of India. So coming on to the innovative steps body, the very first is about the amendments in the subsidy calculation formula. So whatever we are calculating, we need to raise the cap, and the peace clause inclusion. So like food security, under this food security programs are there, like fisheries are there in the peace clause, so we can also include some other parts as well in those peace clause. Next is about revision of the base year for the subsidy calculation, it should be revised. Next is about adjustment of the external reference prices for inflation, like there is a provision that if inflation is there, we can give the due credit. So this is saying that we need to adjust for the adjustment of this inflationary prices from the external sector also. You can do external reference, we can take. So these are some innovative steps we can take to reform or to provide some solutions for these issues. Moving on to the conclusion, we can write some recent development that India urges WTO at Asian Development Bank meeting to reassess these farm subsidies that has the impact on the food security in India, and it is advocating for the effective reforms for the emerging economies like India. So this was the third answer. Moving on to the model answer, starting with some data, then subsidies, how it has benefited, like the importance, then categorization. Moving on to the issues, then some counter arguments, this we have already discussed, then some innovative steps, finally coming up with the conclusion. Okay, so we have completed 3 questions. So that was it from my side. Thank you and have a nice day and keep writing.